So the Young Conservative Network have left the Conservative Party. The last 3 years of working to bring together disconnected young conservatives across the United Kingdom through events, group chats, with our social media presence, we have now taken the decision to cease formal operations of the Young Conservative Network. We believe that we've made a positive contribution to the Conservative movement by facilitating enabling between us, our members to cabinet ministers and members of parliament through our 50 different events. During the pandemic and later in person, whilst we believe more work is needed to solidify the youth vote, we have reached the point in our lives where it is necessary to move on. In our dealings with the Conservative Party, we've both always worked to build commonality and bridges between us and our members. In the last year, this has proved increasingly challenging due to the political climate, as we observe an increasing disconnect between members and the party since the tumultuous removal of 2 elected party leaders, leading to factional issues that have yet to be resolved. And this is true, right? All of the things that young conservatives would like were things that were promised in the Boris Johnson manifesto, right? Like more like levelling up and NHS investment and HS2 and planning deregulation, all things that young Tories would like because it involves actual things that young people might benefit from. Those have all been scrapped since Boris Johnson got ousted, so I'm not surprised. Although young Tory could be anything up to 55. But I think it's reasonable for them to say that the direction of the party on the manifesto that they're elected on is not what the party looks like now. And they're right. They're right to say that the party that they're elected on and the manifesto that they joined on isn't something that reflects their values anymore. And doesn't, because, this is what the people voted for as well. Like the general public elected this, and it's nowhere near anything like what we're actually seeing now from the current Sunak administration, which is there actually specifically, it looks like, to protect their older voters at the expense of a bunch of young people. So yeah, why would you be a young Tory even if you're like an aspirational upper middle class young person? You're still not getting anything from the current iteration of the Conservative Party. So I'm not surprised that they've left. To win the next general election, it'll be necessary for our Conservative Party to heal the divides that still exist. We still believe that Conservative ideals are popular with the younger generation. To us, press X to doubt, right? Not exactly much evidence for this when most young people would like actual left-wing economics, thank you. It's not popular. Like, millennials are getting more left-wing over time. And Zoomers are also very left-wing too. So, I don't know where you're getting this information from. Maybe the dinner parties that you have at your conservative associations, maybe? Our present policy offering to them is less than inspiring. Having had the privilege to engage with young conservatives over many years, we have both been made aware that the lack of ambitious proposals on housing and planning reform, childcare and education are critical issues that are still not being adequately addressed. All true. Because no government, whether conservative or liberal or leftist, right? Nobody thinks that investing in new housing, childcare and education are bad things. Because these are things that do need more state investment, right? I mean, our schools are literally collapsing. And if you're just like an actual like one nation Tory type who just want to see public investment for the good of the nation, you're just not getting it from the current like neoliberal dross that's been Conservative Party policy for 44 years. I'm not surprised that they're angry, given how much they're being failed by the state, by the government of the Conservative Party. Having been established to facilitate connections between young conservatives for over 3 years, we are thankful for the opportunities and support we've received from our ministers, patrons and guests that have championed our work. We have taken this decision not because we wish to not see the Conservative Party continue to succeed, but that our personal circumstances and timing commitments are now incompatible with our responsibilities. In the near future, we'd like to take steps to offload our group chats and legally dissolve our company. We both would like to thank you, our members, and those previous members of our team for working helping our organisation and making it a success story over the last few years. So, I mean, this is a pretty damning indictment of where the Conservative Party are right now, and how they're not just facing electoral oblivion for this election, they're also facing electoral oblivion because they are offering nothing, right? Why would any young person vote Tory? Not even just now, but in the future. Because not only have they screwed things up when you're in your, formative years, once you've started wanting to start a family and not being able to afford to because of failures on housing, failure on wages, failing on the cost of living, right? All of these things will turn you away from the Conservative Party. But on top of that, they've been the ones who've ruined it from the start in your early years as well, right? You've not, like, young people have known nothing but Conservative governments in their adult life, really. And they've done nothing for them because they've only ever looked after their vote base. Rishi Sunak said as much. Why should we care about students? They'll never vote Conservative anyway. And so they've not developed policy that influences people. So they're not just dead in the water at the next election. They're going to be dead further and further and further afield as well. Because the young people are only getting more left-wing over time as neoliberal capitalism fails to bring them together, right? Fails them to bring them any actual material wealth. Fails to fix the social issues that have been called by the Conservative Party. And I do think that makes space for a left-wing party. If Labour themselves want to become like the establishment, like centre-right party, which is clearly what Starmer and Reeves are looking to do with the help of all of their Labour Together money, right? There is now going to be space to have an actual left-wing party, potentially the Greens. I know Philip Proudfoot just joined the Greens, so we shall see. But the Tories, the worst part is the Tories don't realise why they're losing, right? I mentioned this on the question time that we watched, but I want to do a proper segment about it with my actual face in it. So I'll talk about it now as well. In that there's been this thing where Jonathan Gullis was on Politics Live, we watched it on stream, saying if the Conservative Party don't get a grip on immigration, they toast at the next election. And I'm like, you're toast at the next election anyway, and it's partly because you care so much about immigration, because you keep fighting divisive cultural issues, because you've appointed a minister for wokery, right? Because you've not even bothered tackling the key issue, which is of the economy, right? Rachel Reeves is not wrong to say we are fighting on the economy, just an economy of stability rather than an economy of hope, or economy of productivity, or an economy of emboldening the next generation, right? Because that's not what you're going to be getting from Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. But she's right to want to fight the election on the economy, because the Conservatives have abandoned the economy, which is the only thing they ever get voted on. The economy is the most important factor when it comes to electing a government. They have screwed up the economy, and in the wake of loads of people literally not being able to afford to be able to live, they are concentrating on pronouns in schools and stopping the boats and on other kind of completely tangential cultural nonsense that people think makes them look really out of touch, because they are completely out of touch. No one can watch a video of Rishi Sunak saying, I have no working class friends, or Rishi Sunak saying, we took money from deprived urban areas and redirected into Royal Tunbridge Wells. Here, watch me fail to know how to use a contactless card, right? Like, he's so completely out of touch, and the Tories themselves are out of touch, that they think that the pressing concern on the ground is what's happening with the boats, what's happening with irregular migration, when the real problem is the fact that people's money in their pocket doesn't go far enough, because inflation's been terrible, wages have been depressed, and the country is falling apart because of lack of investment. That's what they did. They did that. And the sensible types, right? Actual, not the sensibles, but like actual sensible people in the Conservative Party, like the young Conservatives, know that they're getting nothing from these people. Nothing. Not even like the tiniest morsel of policy that's geared towards younger people who are increasingly going to be the voting cohort, because that's, how time works. And so the Conservative Party have not just doomed themselves for now. They've doomed themselves for years and decades to come. Where's their vote going to come from? Labour have clearly signalled they want to stick on the ground, park their lawn underneath the Conservative tanks, right? In terms of centre-right neoliberal fiscal policy, maybe a bit more kind of centrist with some level of government investment, but no like actual privatisation or cooperative management of the economy. Which means that, given this new image that they've got, they'll probably will just capture, right, a bunch of the kind of second down in terms of older cohorts of voters. When we look at the polling, right, the only cohort that still votes majority Conservative is 65 plus. So 50 to 65, even they've gone Labour now. And if their mortgage prices come down, if the base rate decreases, if Labour get a grip of the problems, like, they can stick on that sector of the electorate And then as time moves on, maybe there'll be a left-wing challenge. And the Conservative Party probably won't have much left to be able to draw on once their voting cohort leave the electorate, to grant a large euphemism on that. And there'll be no one left to vote for them because they are completely out of touch. They think that they can use culture wars. And all it's doing, it's not distracting people from the cost of living crisis, because that's your main material condition, is the economy that you live in, right? Your own personal living standards. And that instead of getting distracted by the culture war stuff, it makes the Conservative Party look ridiculous. Because they are ridiculous, right? This segment that we're going to watch now is from GB News, and it was Dawn Neeson saying people want the boat stopped, not a tax cut, which is like a complete inversion of reality, given what the media class think and what people actually think, right? They want more money in their pocket. They do like tax cuts. And they're far more concerned about being able to alleviate their cost of living crisis than they do about whether or not the people are arriving on the south coast or not.
Good morning. So Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is considering reducing taxes on income, inheritance and businesses in Wednesday's autumn statement.
You might say about time, but he was careful to warn against any moves that might fuel inflation.
I do believe that if we're going to be a dynamic, thriving, energetic, fizzing economy, we need low tax and we need
He's saying fizzing again, chat. A dynamic and fizzing, these words mean nothing.
taxes to be lower than they are at the moment. We're not going to do anything irresponsible, particularly by which I mean anything that fuels inflation.
So former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, regular on GB News, joins us in the studio now. He's in grave danger here, Dawn, of over-promising and under-delivering now on taxes.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, basically. I mean, obviously, the thing that developed over the weekend was the income tax, our possible cut, which he is denied all the way along that he was even considering. But obviously an extra £30 billion has been discovered by the Office for Budget Responsibility. So they now think maybe that they can cut 1 or 2p off the income tax. However, then the Cabinet are saying, well, that could trigger inflation again, and there is that debate. You know, the most important thing I think he said over the weekend is that whatever happens, it was all signed off last night, by the way. It's just got to be approved. Andrew, you're the political expert here, so you know better than me. It was all signed off last night, evidently, and now needs to be approved. But, you know, the one line you take away from everything and all the speculation over the weekend was that they may defer cuts, whatever cuts they may be, whether it's inheritance tax or income tax or winter fuel payments or national insurance or any of the other things they've discussed, until the spring budget. And if you take anything away from it, it's the statement from Jeremy Hunt at the week said, Rome wasn't built in a day. And that means that basically everything we've speculated on, everything the paper's been full of all weekend, and and it's so many, business tax, small business VAT, stamp duty, premium bonds even, all discussed, but
It'll be mad if they do that for a number of reasons, Dawn, because people, A, need the money in their pocket now. Of
course.
And secondly, we could have an election in May, because if the small boats Rwanda issue is not resolved, and I suspect it won't be, and if the numbers of migrants crossing the channel are multiplying throughout the summer, a May election. So, we get these tax cuts in April, and people will think, did we not see that? Are we really going to fall for that?
Yeah.
Well, exactly that.
I mean, I don't necessarily think that people will be not amenable to a tax cut, right? I think people will be happy to see more money in their pocket, but, in terms of the people who actually matter in terms of the cost of living crisis, whatever tax cut they get is not something that they would immediately notice in terms of their real living standards, which is where their votes are going to come from, right? The incumbent government is giving them lowering living standards. It doesn't matter whether or not they see headlines about potential tax cuts or anything like that. What they're going to look at is they're going to look at how much they're spending each day, what the standard of living looks like, and they make a kind of snap vibes-based judgment off of what that looks like. They're not going to see, oh, well, I see that they've changed the basic rate from 20% down to 19%. I'm definitely voting Tory, because that's not how people's brains work when it comes to elections. They don't just look at the individual numbers. They need to be able to feel the difference. And not only will a small tax cut on income not be felt as a difference for most people who are actually seeing issues with cost of living, but on top of that, even if they were feeling a change in their pocket in what their standard of living looked like, by doing it in April, when an election's going to potentially be in May means that they're not going to have time to know what that difference looks like.
Overt election bribe.
Yes, and that's what it sounds like. And the thing is, it's like, it's like, the inheritance.
All elections are bribery, Andrew. That's how elections work, right? People kept saying about Jeremy Corbyn always trying to bribe people with policy that's for them. Yeah, that's called how you craft policy. Oh, I'm going to craft policy I think nobody will like. That's not how you get elected.
Tax, which is the big thing, it affects a tiny percentage of people.
They're not going to do it, Dom.
I know they won't do it because Labour, the instant ammunition for Labour then, isn't it? You can actually use that as well. You're helping the rich rather than helping the majority, ignoring the fact that many of the people in London and the South East are not rich who will also fall into this. But, it's like, you mentioned the migration policy and obviously the NHS, the waiting list. Now, it's like promising to cut income tax. Is that more important to people than the small boats and the NHS? What is going to win them more votes at the election?
I mean, the NHS is part of the economy being screwed over, right? But the boats is obviously a complete non-issue when it comes to cost of living, which is the key issue. And it does, and for most voters, I think it makes the Tories look completely detached from reality. Whereas the NHS is something everybody actually uses. It's not part of the political theatre in the same way that the regular migration stuff is like. So I reckon, if you were going to take those three policies you've chosen there, the things that would radiate with the population more is NHS waiting times, and it is how much money is in people's pocket and how much it costs to live, which almost certainly always poll at the moment, especially in the winter months, as being the more pressing issues coming for the next election.
I don't know the answer to this question, by the way.
Yeah.
What is going to win them more votes? Is it cutting those NHS waiting lists, stopping the small boats, or people having, what was the average, £450 annually on average, the income tax would save a family? Which is more important? Which is going to win that election?
I think if they stop the boats, if they sorted the immigration, the migrants out, I think it would be a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah,
No, I literally, you have to not know any normal people, right? You have to live in a completely different reality. If you think that the boat stopping, which the vast majority of the time is only something people actually deal with tangentially through a computer or a TV screen rather than in real life, unless you live in Portland or you live in Devon, you're probably not very likely to even know any migrants were coming over at all. You wouldn't know there were any boats whatsoever. You see it in the press and it becomes an issue. Like, the idea that some people go, well, I know that my mortgage has massively gone up and I can't afford to live because everything costs more and my wage hasn't increased, right? And the NHS doesn't work and the school doesn't work. All of these things are failing in terms of national infrastructure. But I've seen on the Daily Express that the boats have been stopped and the irregular migration numbers are down. I guess I'll continue voting Tory to screw over my own wallet. Like, no one's doing this, right?
I think you're probably right, but I mean, it's everything.
Because people are sick to death of it. The whole length and breadth of the country, they're sick of it. Sick of these people pouring in. We don't ever get rid of them. They stay forever. There was a story in one of the Sunday Storms saying tens of thousands of these people who are here illegally will be given an amnesty. For heaven's sake.
And we don't know who they are.
Which just means even more will come, because you're then going to get an amnesty.
And the whole point of this is stopping the boats, stopping people losing their lives.
And the popularity, or lack of, with Rishi Sunak is a serious issue for the Conservatives. Research over the weekend, a poll by the Daily Express, saying that he is likely to become the first Prime Minister in history to lose his own seat in an election. At what point do the Conservatives admit that they cannot win with him at the helm?
The problem they've got there, Bev, is how many Conservative Prime Ministers have we had over the past year?
Too many.
And also on top of that, before all of this kind of reinventing as like the party of change stuff that Rishi was doing, right? Before he made it very clear to the public that he was a man who was completely out of touch with the reality of normal people, who's never done a real job in his entire life and was born into gigantic wealth and privilege, right? Until all that stuff happened, Rishi Sunak was the one popular thing about the party. He used to poll higher than the Tories. He doesn't now, obviously, because he's outed himself as being completely unfit to govern. But before then, he was actually pretty popular in relative to the Conservative Party because, again, the thing that's hurting people is the economic problems, which they kind of seem to have forgotten he was the Chancellor beforehand, right? Although Liz Truss, I guess, has taken most of the flack, even though it was kind of a latent problem with Conservative economics. So really and truly, Sunak isn't the problem. It isn't a problem until he made himself the problem by being bad at his job of trying to win the next election, right? If he just kept his head down, he might have been able to save some face at the election. But now he's just parading himself around as a massive idiot. Suddenly he's tanking his own polling as well as his own party's polling. And again, if these people knew any real life people, they would know that that was true as well. They would know, again, that, you know, people don't really care about whether Sunak looks good or not. They care about how expensive their mortgage is. It just turns out that when you start bleating about 7 bins and meat taxes that never exist, people then tend to take you even less seriously than they were before, or just cancelling a bunch of stuff for no reason. Like, he's not ingratiate himself with the public. Let's be real. Let's be real. And again, like, it's the economy, stupid. It always comes down to the economy.
Exactly. And it's like, who do you parachute in? I think, Andrew, I don't know what you think about this, but how many people would think, right, OK, you really don't know what you're doing now if you parachute another
Yeah, but that would be the problem.
PM in.
And the country would insist, and the clamour for an immediate general election would be overwhelming.
Yes, which they would lose. They're still 20 points behind.
Yeah. I know. Well, a couple of polls last week, 30.
Well, 30, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, and it won't change. It actually won't change fundamentally, right? There's nothing they can do to fix this problem because they don't want to spend any money, because that's not what conservatism is, right? The way you fix the issue is by deficit spending on infrastructure to boost growth, to fix the issues with all of our crumbling infrastructure, with our collapsing schools and failed NHS, all of that stuff that needs fixing. But they won't do it. They won't do it. Because they believe that inflation is being caused by too much demand and not indeed supply chain shocks. But, you know, that's going to dig them a larger hole as they don't fix the economic problems and then lean into the culture war stuff, which these people are happy to lap up because they've never actually experienced any of the economic problems that everybody else is dealing with. So they think in their own minds that it's the small boats that's the problem, when no, it's the cost of living crisis. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.